Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in EDH. Today we're looking at Killian Ink Duelist from Strixhaven. So this is a 2-mana Orzhov commander. He's a 2/2 lifelink menace, and he says spells you cast that target a creature cost 2 less to cast. So this is our creatures, our opponent's creatures, doesn't matter. Whatever creature we target, the spell costs 2 less. So importantly, this means that 3-mana spells become 1-mana spells, 4-mana spells become 2-mana spells. So there's two main things to do with this. One is play a bunch of auras, which target creatures, and make those auras cheaper, and then load them up on creatures or Killian himself to Voltron our opponents down. And then the other one is removal spells. So all of our removal spells that are expensive become cheaper. So first off, let's start off with our beatdown auras. We've got Glitters, Battle Mastery, Idolize, Light of Promise, Mantle the Ancient, Angelic Destiny. Remember, these cards are 1 mana, 2 mana, 1 mana, 1 mana, 1 mana, 3 mana because of Killian. A lot better. Similarly, these cantrips turn into 1 mana cantrips. So Angelic Gift gives evasion, draws a card for 1 mana. Courageous Resolve is up to 1 target creature you control gains protection from each of your opponents until end of turn and draw a card. And then if you have 5 or less life, you can't lose life this turn, you can't lose the game this turn, your opponents can't win the game this turn. Mainly, this is for the cantrip, and since you are pro all of your opponents, you are also pro all of their creatures, and therefore Killian can attack unimpeded. It also means that this doubles as a protection spell because your commander is also immune to any of their removal. Feather of Flight, basically the same thing as Angelic Gift. Grizzly Transformation is a cantrip that gives Intimidate. Price of Fame costs 2 less if it targets a legendary creature, and then it destroys a creature and surveils 2. So it's either 2 mana or 1 mana if it targets a legend. Scavenged Weaponry, +1/+1, not so important, mainly just here as 1 mana, draw a card for +1. And Shelter gives our guy protection and draws a card. Then, since we're running a whole bunch of auras to Voltron Killian, why not also run Core Spirit Dancer, Mace Enchantress, Pearl Ear, SRAM, all the cards that are going to draw based on auras. We also have Lord Skitter's Blessing to draw for the enchantments, since we're going to have an enchanted creature anyway. Sage's Reverie becomes a 2 mana, draw a card for each aura and +1 for each aura. Very good. Songbird's Blessing, which cascades every attack into another aura, and this is only 2 mana if we enchant it to Killian or any of our other creatures. Here we've got our Evasion, which includes a number of cards we've already seen, but also has Spirit Mantle and Unquestioned Authority. The enchanted creature is pro creatures, meaning our opponents cannot block it. Pretty straightforward Orzhov mana base with some additions, Fell the Profane and Hagra Mauling among the lands, since these double as 2 mana kill spells when we have Killian out. We also have Hall of Heliod's Generosity to get back enchantments. If we happen to have our creatures die and then the auras fall off, we can get them back. We also have Sarah's Sanctum because we're playing a bunch of enchantments. Also notably, we do need to stretch our colors. There's not that many great Orzhov colors once we start getting past 30 lands, so we are playing some kind of crappy ones like Shine Shadow Snarl, but that's okay. Bunch of protection. Obviously, we need Killian or just anything else, but mainly Killian not to get killed or countered. And we have cards like Pentarch Ward that draw a card and give pro colors. Importantly, Apostle's Blessing becomes a 0 mana protection spell. So the 1 mana here gets taken off from Killian, so it just becomes a Phyrexian mana. So for just 2 life, we can always have a protection spell for Killian. Timely Ward is 1 mana, flash indestructible on Killian as well. Pretty important there. We've got our Mass Reanimation, Mantle the Ancients as previously seen, but also Replenish. So let's say we load a bunch of auras up on Killian, and then he does wind up actually getting killed. We can restore all of the auras back with these. And then, very fun, a ton of removal spells, which become very cheap as a result of Killian being in play. So Abstruse Appropriation becomes 2 mana to exile something, and then we can cast that spell. Astarian's Thirst, exile a creature, put X+1 counters on a commander you control, where X is the power of the creature exiled. So this is basically 2 mana, exile the biggest creature on your opponent's side of the board and buff Killian that much. Blight Grenade, destroy target creature, and all creatures get -3 until end of turn. So this becomes 3 mana, destroy a creature, and everything else gets -3. So kind of like a sweeper for 3 mana. Chains of Custody, similar to that. Come Back Wrong, we blow up a creature and then get a temporary copy of that creature. So blow up something that has an ETB trigger and then get a token copy of it, and it only costs 1 mana. Curtain's Call has Undaunted, so assuming you're in a 4-player pod, this only costs 3, and then Killian makes it only cost 1. So for just 1 mana, we can at instant speed destroy 2 creatures. Obviously, auras like Darksteel Mutation become only 1 mana, so for just 1 mana, we can strip all the abilities off of an opposing commander, for example. And then the same is going to hold true for, all of the kill spells. So let's highlight some of the other ones that are specifically great because of Killian. So Isildur's Fateful Strike. Destroy target creature. If its controller has more than 4 cards in hand, they exile cards from their hand equal to the difference. And then you may only cast this if you control a legendary creature or planeswalker, but, if we have Killian in play, we can cast this for only 2. Parting Thoughts is destroy target creature and you draw X and lose X, where X is the number of counters on that creature. So although we are not guaranteed to have an opponent's creature have counters on it, this is still just a 1 mana kill spell when Killian is in play. And then if the creature does happen to have counters on it, we get to draw a bunch of cards. Slaughter. This one is very important for 4 mana, or really 2 with Killian. Destroy target non-black creature that can't be regenerated, but it has buyback pay for life. So for 2 mana and 4 life, we can destroy anything that's non-black and then buy it back and then cast it again. We also just have Snuff Out and Deadly Rollick as just regularly good kill spells anyway. Stroke of Midnight becomes 1 mana, as does Generous Gift, as does Withering Torment. And then we have Twisted Embrace. It enchants an artifact or creature you control. When it enters, you destroy a creature or planeswalker, and it gives the enchanted permanent +1/+1. So this is just another way, a cheap way to blow up an opposing creature that also happens to pump Killian, and it's an aura, so it triggers all of those aura draw card spells. And then finally, Vats from Fallout. 4 mana with Split Second, choose any number of target creatures with equal toughness and destroy the chosen creatures. So obviously variable, destroys at least 1 creature, hypothetically more than just 1, and has Split Second, so your opponent can't even counter it. Then we're in Orzhov, and we're mostly built around a Voltron commander that is only 2 mana, so we can play a bunch of Stax pieces. Especially we're leaning towards enchantment, so Eidolon of Rhetoric over maybe some of the other Rule of Law cards and actual Rule of Law, because we have things that trigger off of enchantments. And then we've got some sweepers, so we saw Blight Grenade earlier, but we also have Mandate of Abaddon. Choose target creature you control, destroy all creatures with power less than that creature's power. So assuming we've aura'd up our Killian, this is just 2 mana, blow up everything on the field that isn't Killian. And Winds of Wrath, similarly, destroy all creatures that aren't enchanted, they can't be generated. And then we've got some tutors, including Heliod's Pilgrim. Now, there were a lot, and I mean a lot of cards that got cost reduced as a result of Killian, or were just generally good. So things like Eidolon of Countless Battles, Inner Demon, a bunch of just generally solid card draw, more protection for Killian, things like the Moms, which I opted not to play for multiple reasons. 1, we already had some protection spells, and 2, there's a number of sweepers in the deck, and I didn't want the Moms to just die to those sweepers. Ultimately opted not to play any of the ramp. I decided that because we're running Stax and we're running stuff like Stony Silence, that these are potentially liabilities, and we don't really even need them. Although obviously this could be wrong. It's usually good to play things like Chrome Mox and Mox Diamond in the deck, so hypothetically, these are still good to play even with the Stax plan, and that has been the case over many of the other decks that I've had with these cards. And then just some other removal spells that happen to be, cheaper, but we didn't really need them. We already had a bunch of removal spells anyway. Retether as another reanimation. I felt like Replenish and Mantle were enough, and that we didn't need this 3rd one. And then additional Stax cards that I could have opted to play, but ultimately chose not to, either because they conflicted with things, like we do have some cards that draw, so Chains of Mephistopheles would have impeded that, or just I felt like we had enough Rule of Law effects already, we didn't need more, things like that. And lastly, Cathar's Call, which is an enchantment that on our end step makes a 1/1 token. So this is only 1 mana. I felt like making a 1/1 token wasn't that good, even if we can keep making one, so ultimately decided not to play this. But a lot of potential changes that you could make to the deck. So let's say maybe you or your play group isn't really a fan of a lot of these Stax cards, you could hypothetically cut a bunch of these for a bunch of those. So with all that said, that is going to do it for Killian Ink Duelist in EDH.